It's Monday, April 1st, Tuesday, April 2nd, if you're on the East Coast, across the pond, or down under. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North, on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including Deep Talk Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Support this show by shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read up on the SOR Newswire, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Head to our website, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe today. A couple of years ago, our Spaced Out Radio audience received the pleasure of listening to the dulcet tones of Simon Entwistle, who graced us with his tell-all stories and vast knowledge of the history of some of the best British hauntings. Well, Simon is back tonight to talk about the haunted stories from the old country, including Jack the Ripper. Simon conducts haunted tours in his own graphical style, complete with resident ghosts and sound effects, whilst recounting the history of these fascinating towns. He also carries out guided heritage coach tours for groups for all of the above towns that he will talk about tonight and the cities that are involved. In addition to this, Simon also provides tours in the Pendle Witch country and tours of the Ribble Valley. We're going to get into that as well. You can find Simon's website by going to tophattours.co.uk. The website, once again, tophattours.co.uk. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Simon Entwistle, it's been way too long since we've had you on this show, and I have to tell you, my friend, you were one of the most requested guests to bring back on this show. I'm finally glad we are here to hook this up.
Dave, an absolute honour to be back with you once again. Thanks very much for kindly having me back on the show. Thank you.
Oh, anytime, anytime. Now, let's introduce our audience to you here, my friend, because for those who don't know or haven't caught our podcast, don't know too much about you, let's learn a little bit about you. How did you get involved with the paranormal?
Right. Well, many years ago, Dave, I joined the British Army, and I was sent to a very, very beautiful city in the north of England called the City of York. And in York, every single street comes from a different century. Beautiful, beautiful buildings dating right back to medieval times, really. And, of course, the city is absolutely ideal for what we call ghost walks. There are 8 different ghost walks in York, from a Viking ghost walk to a Victorian poisoning ghost walk, a Roman ghost walk. You can even go on the river for a guided ghost walk cruise. And when I'd left the barracks in the evening, I would go to the city, and I went on quite a few of these tours, and I really got bitten by the bug. You'd meet people from all over the world on these tours, and I thought, I'd like to start my own business, and that's exactly what I did do. And I now run some 12 different ghost walks all over the north of England, including the City of York. But I do find ghost stories fascinating, Dave. I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medium, I'm certainly not a clairvoyant, but I am a collector of ghost stories. So that's really my interest in the paranormal.
I got a quick question, and normally we get to hour number 2 of questions from our audience, but Dale brings up something important that I think we can ask here. Simon, in regards to the fact that the majority of our listeners are in North America, mainly the United States, how does paranormal stories from where you are in the United Kingdom really differ from what you hear is happening over here?
Well, there are some magnificent ghost stories in America and Canada, of course. I suppose the only difference really would be the history in the United Kingdom. A lot of the buildings, of course, date well before America and Canada were really colonized. So that's what makes the stories quite fascinating, because of the length of history, really, Dave. That's the only difference. But there are some great stories from North America, of course.
Have you ever had the opportunity to investigate or go on any tours over here?
I have been to the United States. I've been to Pittsburgh and Boston and Philadelphia, but I've never ever had the honour of going to Canada. Canada, of course, is a country I'd love to visit, and I'm a great fan of military history. And if you were to go to, shall I say, the battlefields of northern France and see the thousands and thousands of Canadian war graves, it makes you realise just what a magnificent contribution Canada made in World War One and World War Two. A lot of very brave young men from Canada.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. So getting back to your story here in regards to the paranormal, you have set up Top Hat Tours.
Yes.
And you can find the website tophattours.co.uk. Explain to us and the audience what that's all about.
Right. Well, it is tourism-based. I must say it is pure tourism, really. I conduct a variety of tours, not just the ghost walks, but we'll climb on a coach, a tourism coach, and I take people into the countryside, to various cities, but I keep the commentary going from the courier seat with the microphone, and it's really storytelling, but from the coaches, and you point out various buildings from the side of the coach and tell the stories. And I've got to say, I really do enjoy that, Dave. And I never get tired of the different tours I do. Really, I'm always looking for new stories, and it's always a great privilege to go to another town and tell the stories relating to those towns, of course.
And with the age of England and the Great Britain and the United Kingdom in general, there's got to be thousands upon thousands of stories throughout history that you're still learning, even though you grew up there.
Oh, very, very much so. Very much so. But I love to throw the historical facts in with the actual ghost story as well, Dave. And I've come well and truly armed today with quite a few good ghost stories. And the first one, you could say, has a North American connection. One hotel I visit on a regular basis is a beautiful, beautiful 16th century hotel called the Duncan-Halsh. Now, the Duncan-Halsh family were very, very wealthy textile barons from Lancashire. Lancashire, of course, is a northern county in northern England and was really the world hub for textiles. It's a very, very damp environment, and cotton likes a damp environment. So towns such as Blackburn, Burnley, Nelson, Colne, Oswald, Twistle, Accrington, Manchester, Preston, the textile workers literally clothed the world. The Duncan-Halsh family owned a huge factory in Accrington. Their home is now a hotel, but it's a beautiful, beautiful building, and has a most amazing ghost story, the story of a young lady called Lucette. You can imagine this beautiful, stately home. The Duncan-Halsh family employed a French governess, a very beautiful young lady called Lucette. And Lucette arrived from Paris to work for Duncan-Halsh family in the very early 1760s. Christmas, 1766, they had a marvellous ball, a beautiful ball at the Duncan-Halsh, and a handsome red-coated British Army officer arrived called Lieutenant John Starkey. He made his way into the ballroom, was given a glass of wine, and as he looked around the ballroom, he saw this beautiful young lady, Lucette. As he stared into her eyes, it was literally love at first sight. As she gazed up at him, she felt the same effect. It wasn't long before they married, but Lucette loved working for the Duncan-Halsh family, and she was their governess. She would teach the children how to speak French. She would teach them how to have correct etiquette, etc. And she decided to stay with the family. However, Lieutenant John Starkey was called to arms straight away, because at that period of time, our good American cousins decided they wanted independence. The British government weren't too impressed by this, and they sent every available British soldier to North America, including the lieutenant. Starkey apparently was at Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Ticonderoga, and the final surrender at Yorktown. Now, as soon as the lieutenant had left England, Lucette found to her delight that she was indeed carrying a child. And, of course, in those days, there was no mobile phones, no telephones. The only way you could contact people would be by letter. And it took a long, long time for these letters to arrive back in England from North America. She heard a rumour that her husband had, in fact, been killed. It was just a rumour, but she took it very, very seriously. Christmas Eve, heavily pregnant, she made her way down a long avenue of oak trees to the local river.
I think Simon may have put us on mute. Oh, we're reconnecting here. 1 second here. We are reconnecting on his end. Right in the middle of a good story. That's the one thing about Simon, is I think he all relaxes us just a little bit. A little bit. And we just get into story time. Oh, no. We're going to try getting Simon back on here right quickly here. So just bear with me here. We are going to get him back on. Hopefully we're able to connect with him, because this will really suck if we don't. I think his computer just crashed. That's what I think happened. I think. This really sucks if it did, because he is such a storyteller. Such a storyteller. We're going to continue to try and get a hold of him here as we go on. But one of the things, when Simon was on a couple of years ago, we got really, really into Jack the Ripper, because one of his tours that he does, which you could find at tophattours.com, is the Jack the Ripper tour. And this is probably his most famous tour that he does. So with that, I think it's absolutely amazing that we are able to get Simon on, because here's a gentleman, and trust me, he looks good in a top hat. Looks absolutely good in a top hat. And he broke down like 5 or 6 different killers that he thought it was. Well, the problem is with the news today, or not today, but just a few weeks ago, in regards to, the fact that scientists may have solved who the killer is. That's one of the stories we're gonna get into tonight with him. So we're just trying to get a hold of Simon back on Skype once again. And I'm going to try and reboot my Skype as well, because we definitely want to make sure that everything is running A-OK. And I have to tell you, this past weekend, we did a big time update on our computer, because our Windows 10, if you haven't had to deal with Windows 10 yet, good on you. Stay away from it, because we run everything off of Windows 10. And we had a major, major snafu happen. And so we had to reset absolutely everything on the computer over the weekend. And trust me, it's quite stressful, because we had a lot of things that we needed to accomplish. But on the flip side, we were able to get everything up and running tonight. So what we're going to try and do here is we're still trying to get a hold of Simon Entwistle. We're going to try and reboot Skype, see if we could get that to work on our end, making sure that it isn't an issue on our side. And then we're going to try and get him going here on his end as well. I'm hoping that his computer didn't die. And we are trying. We are efforting, as they say. So hopefully he didn't have to do one of these Windows 10 updates. Well, his computer is showing that it isn't online. So we're going to continue trying to get to Simon here in the next little bit. But quite the storyteller. And like I said, one of the stories we are going to be talking to him about is Jack the Ripper. Now, Simon is very well versed in this, as I stated. And we are trying to find out who actually killed him. And it was just a couple of weeks ago that we actually had this story on the SOR Newswire, provided by Captain Shirk, our newsie, our news director, who said that they believe new scientists, through genetic studies and tests, stated that they believe a 23-year-old Polish barber, and who was a prime suspect at the time by the British police, named Aaron Kosminski, was the one who actually was the serial killer. Now, apparently, through DNA, they have been able to, through a peer-reviewed journal, conclude that his DNA evidence, that's Kosminski's, was found on one of the mutilated bodies of Catherine Eddowes. All right. I think Simon might be back up and running here. Hey, Simon, give me 2 seconds here because we want to make sure that you are back up and running. I was talking to the audience while I guess your computer crashed or something crashed on your end.
It did, yes, yeah.
But that's okay. I was telling them about your Jack the Ripper stories, and that we are going to get into that with them tonight. But you were saying right before your computer died, you were telling us a beautiful story about a young lady falling in love with a British bobby or soldier.
That's quite correct. Yeah. The Lieutenant John Starkey, he, in the conflict, he disappeared. Young Lucette was absolutely convinced that she'd lost him, and on Christmas Eve of that year, she made her way to the banks of the River Calder, and heavily pregnant with child, she jumped into the cold, freezing waters. What makes the story so terribly, terribly sad is the lieutenant had not been killed. He'd been captured, and he had in fact been released as a POW, and got back to England to find that his wife, heavily pregnant with child, had taken her life by jumping into the cold, icy waters of the River Calder. Overcome with grief, he jumped into the water himself and perished. Their ghosts to this very, very day still haunt the old Duncan House residence, but they're only seen around the Christmas period. A very, very touching, but also a very, very sad story.
My goodness. And people still see the ghost of John Starkey today?
Yes. Quite a few paranormal TV crews have been to the hotel, and some of these highly skilled mediums have in fact come across the ghosts. And there was a most amazing experiment in 1978 with a Scottish medium who did in fact contact the ghost of Stark himself. And what makes it quite unique is the fact that this story isn't that well known, but he certainly picked up on dates and indeed characters associated with that period of time.
Do you think that with him that he is maybe still looking for his wife and that's why he's haunting?
It's such a terrible, tragic story to have got back home the day after his wife had taken her life. It must have been absolutely soul-destroying, really. And perhaps he was in such a state of shock that he just couldn't enter the next world. That's quite possible, Dave, really.
So with him, has her ghost ever been seen?
Oh, yes.
What about the ghost of the child she was carrying?
Well, the baby was never born. The baby was never, ever born. But there have been some stories of people who've been driving past the hotel in the early hours of the morning that have seen a female with a long white dress, almost like a night dress, very, very near the hotel entrance, down this long avenue of oak trees.
So with that, to me, in listening to what you were saying, it almost seems like they're still looking for each other on the ghostly realm, and they just haven't met up yet, which seems really odd.
It seems very, very sad, really. But I should imagine that, there'd be some terrible trauma involved, and perhaps that trauma has somehow kept them in a different period of time, almost like a time warp, if you will.
Do you know if any paranormal teams out there, Simon, have tried to bring them together if they're both being seen?
Very, very good question. Very good question. No, I don't know of that actually, Dave, but the stories are well documented, and you can go into the ballroom to this very, very day in the Duncan Halsh, and I've been in there quite a few times with coach parties to tell the story, and sometimes the hair on the back of my head will actually raise by itself. But certainly here in England, a lot of the ghosts do seem to be female. There seems to be a lot of female ghosts, really. But for our next story, I'd like to turn the clock back in time. And
sure,
we're going to
go. Just so you know, we got about 90 seconds before we got to go to break here at the bottom of the hour.
Okay. Well, I've got a whole array of stories coming up, Dave, and we'll continue with, shall we say, the female ghost theme, actually. And our next story is all about a beautiful, beautiful old 1758 public house called the Sun Inn, and that's been visited by many, many paranormal organisations. We'll tell you all about the story.
The one thing I love about your stories, my friend, is you sure hear the passion in your voice when you are telling them. It's so eloquent. We can all just fall asleep listening to you, but we can't fall asleep because the next story is coming.
Yes, well, there's certainly plenty of good stories we'll have today, that's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned, as we got about 30 seconds here, you mentioned that a lot of the stories involve women. Why do you think there's so many female ghosts over there?
Well, I suppose there was a lot of male chauvinism in England, and one of the tours I do is the Pendle Witch Tour, which is probably one of the most famous witch trials in Great Britain, and a lot of the women there did suffer terribly because of male chauvinism, and women do seem to have had a rough deal in this country for many, many years until the early part of the last century when women could actually vote. You know, they had a really rough deal at one time.
Wow. Simon, on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on here as we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Simon Entwistle is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, and if you're just tuning in, you are in for a real paranormal treat. He runs and owns a company called Top Hat Tours over in the United Kingdom, and you can find all of his tours. So if you're heading over to the UK, you got to get on Simon's tours. Tell him you heard him on Spaced Out Radio. That's tophattours.co.uk. tophattours.co.uk. More Spaced Out Radio coming up right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today. Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rockin'. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Glad to have you along for the ride with us as we are talking paranormal UK stories with Simon Entwistle. Before we bring Simon back on, I do want to remind you all that a good way to support this show is by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com, clicking on the shop tab. Go pick yourself up a t-shirt, hats, hoodies, socks, pick up a new coffee mug, and so much more on our website. Once again, it's a great way to support what we do. The beautiful tones of Simon Entwistle are here tonight on Spaced Out Radio as you get to sit back, relax, and listen to some fantastic paranormal stories. Simon owns a company called Top Hat Tours. You could go to their website, tophattours.co.uk, if you want to check it out. Simon, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, we're glad to have you. Now, you're going to tell us a little bit of an eerie story about a woman who is armless.
Yes. That's right, Dave. Many people say, Simon, have you ever seen a ghost? Well, this is the nearest thing to answering that question, really. We once, again, we'll go to this industrial town in the north of England called Accrington. And this is a rather sad story, but with a very, very spooky ending to it, really. Agnes Wildman lived in the town of Accrington way back in 1925. She had a daughter of the name of Maud and a loving husband. Her husband was called Michael, and Michael, unfortunately, was killed in an ammunition factory accident in Scotland. So Agnes is 26 years old. She's lost her husband, but has a daughter of 6 years old called Maud. Like any woman, she doesn't want to be left on the shelf. And she has the misfortune, and it really was a terrible misfortune, of meeting a local lad called John Worley. John Worley was nearly 6 foot tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and considered a good catch for any woman. In those days, not many people could afford to buy their own homes, so they lived in lodgings at number 2 Victoria Street in Accrington, run by a very, very brave lady, as you'll find out, called Miss Horbury. Miss Horbury was 65 years old, and she ran a guest house, if you will. It became blatantly obvious to Miss Horbury that Agnes was indeed being abused by her husband. And at breakfast one morning, she said, "Look, I know what's happening here. I can throw him out if you want me to." "Oh, please, Miss Horbury, I wish I'd never got married. When he drinks, he gets really aggressive. Don't worry, I will get rid of him." When Worley came down for his breakfast, he found a waiting suitcase as well. And he said, "What's that for?" "You're out." "Why?" said Worley. "I'm not seeing women abused under my household. You're going now." He turned round and pointed at young 6-year-old Agnes. "I'll get back at you through her," pointing at the little girl. So that day, Maud went down to the police station and she told the officers that she'd been threatened by her husband and the little girl as well. And the officer said, "Well, where's he living now?" "Well, we believe a place called Claret Street." "Don't worry," said the police. "We shall watch the house." And for 4 days and 4 nights, they did keep an eye on him. He was drinking, but he was making no attempt to go back to Victoria Street. And they decided to stop the surveillance. On the 5th day, Worley had a very, very good drink in what's called the Poplar Club in Accrington. And as the alcohol flowed through his veins, he became very, very aggressive and made his way to the local primary school, where he knew his stepdaughter would be playing in the playground. He walked across the playground and took her by the hand, and the head teacher, a lady called Miss Westwell, came rushing out. "Excuse me, you can't do this." "Well, I'm going to take my stepdaughter to the town of Rishton." He kept his breath away from her so she couldn't smell the alcohol on his breath, and removed from his back pocket a letter which he had forged, saying that the whole family were going to make their way by train that afternoon to the nearby town of Rishton. The head teacher, Miss Westwell, said, "Well, you can take your daughter, but I must keep the letter as confirmation of this." Well, he then took his stepdaughter by the hand and said, "We're going to go and see your mother." And they walked all the way up to 2 Victoria Street. As he hammered on the door was opened, and there was Miss Horbury, 65 years old. This 6-foot-tall lad, John Worley, hit Miss Horbury so hard he broke her jaw. As she fell to the floor, her teeth spilled across the floor. Not just happy with this, John Worley repeatedly kicked her while she was on the floor, breaking her ribs. Whilst this terrible, terrible action was taking place, a grocery delivery man arrived at Victoria Street and could hear shouting and screaming coming from the house, and realised that something very, very sinister was taking place. He contacted Accrington Police Station, and Accrington Police dispatched 2 officers, 2 very, very hardened officers, who were going to see a site that they would take to their graves. They arrived at number 2 Victoria Street, PC Foles and PC William Elliott, and they made their way inside the building. Elliott could smell gas. He made his way to the front room and saw that John Worley had opened the gas oven and had placed his head inside the oven and tried to asphyxiate himself. He was pulled out of the oven and the gas turned off. In the meantime, Foles saw a trail of blood leading to the back door, and Miss Horbury had somehow crawled to the back door, and she'd been very, very badly injured. The only bone that wasn't broken in her body was her right arm. She was in a terrible state of health. The ambulance arrived, and as Foles went into the front room, he saw 6-year-old Agnes sitting down with both her hands removed at the wrist. He took his tie off and wrapped them around the poor girl's wrist to stop the blood flow. The ambulance took them straight to the Victoria Hospital in Accrington, and they were very, very fortunate that day, because waiting for them was a gentleman called Dr. Wheeler. Dr. Wheeler came from the city of Manchester, and he was a very, very fine surgeon. He was actually on a visit that day to look at the casualty department in Accrington. He saved Miss Horbury's life. He saved the little girl's life. But when he dealt with Worley, he said, "Look, why? Why have you done this?" Jealousy, to get back at my wife. Because John Worley wasn't seriously ill, he was immediately arrested and taken down to Accrington Police Station. But word filtered around the town of Accrington that this man had attacked a 65-year-old woman, Miss Horbury, but also removed with a very, very sharp knife the hands of his stepdaughter. You can imagine the people of the town felt very, very deeply distressed by this, and a vigilante mob made their way straight to Accrington Police Station. They broke into the police station, but when they got to the cell, they couldn't get to Worley because he was locked inside the cell. The police called for reinforcements from nearby Preston and nearby Blackburn, and the police had to force everyone out of the police station. They then dressed Worley in a police officer's uniform and took him straight to the prison in Preston. 3 months later, he was brought back for trial. And as he stood in the dock at Accrington Town Hall, the jury assembled. Poor 6-year-old Agnes was brought in, and she sat down and she told the story of what had happened, and told the jury how her hands had been cut off and how she'd seen poor Miss Horbury being repeatedly kicked. The judge said, because Miss Horbury has not died, because Agnes has not died, I cannot try you for murder, but I'll make sure you never walk the streets of any English city ever again. I sentence you to life imprisonment. Well, the people of Accrington were deeply distressed by what had happened, and they raised £15,000 for this young lady. At the same time, the national press in England raised another £50,000. She lived until she was 8 years old. She had grandchildren, but she was always known as the lady with no hands. Now, this is where the story does take a rather sinister, if somewhat frightening twist. Through the tourism department in Accrington, I met the tourism officer, and she said, "Simon, would you like to conduct a tour called Heroes and Villains of Accrington?" I said, "I'd love to." And we did some research, and I found this story, and I said, it's so horrific that I don't think tourists would like the idea of being told about a young lady having her hands removed at the wrist. And the tourism said, "No, Simon, it actually happened. Do it." I will never forget the first tour. We had the mayor of Accrington, we had the local radio station, and we had the local newspaper as well. And normally, when I've conducted a tour, I will just switch off. I will come home, I'll probably have a tin of beer from the fridge, watch some TV, etc. But that night, I felt an atmosphere. I climbed into bed, and around 4 o'clock in the morning, my son, who was only 12 years old at the time, came rushing into the bedroom. Dad, I'm having nightmares." And you could see he was terrified, poor lad. As I got out of bed, I just uttered the words, "John Worley." And then there was peace. It was almost like a veil of depression was lifted from the bedroom. The following day, I was conducting a guided tour at a stately home called Salmsbury Hall, and they have a resident psychic there, a marvellous chap called Gary Johnson. And I told Gary what happened. He put his hand on my shoulder and stared at the ceiling for a few minutes, and he said, "Simon, I can tell you right now, my friend, you brought the ghost of John Worley back with you. You resurrected the story. And I really could feel an atmosphere, Dave, and it was an atmosphere of, dare I say, pure evil, really.
How did you bring in the spirit home?
I think because the story had not been talked about for a good 60 years. And when I took the group, we actually took the group up to 2 Victoria Streets and stood outside and pointed at the building, and I told everyone the story. I didn't get any pleasure from this story at all, Dave, because let's be honest, it's not a very nice story, really. It's an act of pure evil, really. But I could see on the face of those people that I was telling the story to, there was a look of horror, a look of real sadness, really. And I think I brought the atmosphere back with me.
Did this spirit haunt anybody else in your family? You mentioned your boy there, but was anybody else bothered by him? And what was he doing?
No, it was just that one night, Dave, just that one night. You could really, really feel an atmosphere. And as I got out of bed, it was almost like walking in slow motion. But I saw the fear in my son's eyes, and of course, he knew nothing about the story, but I could just feel it. And the medium that I met later on told me about this ghostly encounter, really.
And what did the medium say about this man? Was he still quite upset with having a life sentence?
Well, when he was in prison, Worley, of course, because all the other inmates knew what he had done, his life would be made a misery. He had to be kept in solitary confinement because, let's be honest, a man that could attack an elderly lady and a young girl is no hero, really. And the other inmates made his life an absolute misery. He died in 1963 at a place called Strangeways, which is a huge prison in the city of Manchester.
Oh, wow. So realistically, he didn't die that long ago. So, I mean, for 50 years, that's a lot of pent-up spiritual energy to be carrying around. I mean, the burden of that, Simon, must be very, very angry.
Very, very much so, but a terrible thing to do. But I think alcohol may have played a huge part in this as well, Dave. And alcohol, of course, is a very, very dangerous drug which can turn the most placid person into a very aggressive character. And in his case, that certainly was the case, really.
Has anybody recognized him officially to identify that this is the one we are talking about?
No one's officially recognised that, Dave, but because I brought the story to life, if you will, I think I somehow brought him back to life as well, really.
Gotcha.
But there's definitely, since I've started the tours there, people have mentioned that they've walked past the house and felt real evil and actually felt like an evil presence. And I can really understand because I still do. It's a very, very macabre-looking terraced house in Accrington, and there's now a family that lives in there. It's been renovated, of course, and since I started these tours, I know that no fewer than 4 families have bought the house and left it as well, due to the fact of its terrible historical background.
It's almost like that residence just needs a bulldozer, maybe a park put over it to bring some good energy back.
Yeah, it's a horrible atmosphere. It really, really is. Not a nice one at all, really.
Now, I'm curious in regards to this case, before we move on here to your next story. With this ghost that you allegedly brought to life, why did you decide to bring that story back to life? Why was it important to do so?
Because the actual tour was called the Heroes and Villains Tour. We had to have like a hero, then a villain, then a hero, then a villain. It wasn't really a paranormal type tour, really. It was more historical. But we'd bring heroes, then villains, just to balance the stories up, really, Dave, if you will.
Interesting. We got about 5 minutes. Why don't you get started on your next one, my friend?
Okay, well, the British public house is renowned across the world for being full of stories. And, of course, here in England, we have public houses that date back to the time of William Shakespeare. In the village of Chipping, which is quite near where I am now, stands a lovely 1758 inn called the Sun Inn. The Sun Inn is haunted by the ghost of Lizzie Dean. Who was Lizzie? Well, she came from the city of London, 1833. She was looking for work. By all accounts, she was a very, very attractive, bonny young girl. She made her way inside the Sun Inn and met the landlord, John Tomlinson, and asked about any accommodation, as she wished to work in the local textile factory. However, the landlord said, "Oh no, a girl as bonny as you would do a great job behind my bar. You'd bring a lot of male custom in here. I'll give you a job as a scullery maid, a barmaid." So she accepted the job, and she had a very good friend called Alicia Traynor, who was also a scullery maid, and these two became very, very close. One day, a handsome young lad called David came into the Sun Inn, took one look at young Lizzie, and would you believe he proposed to her? Now, by all accounts, he was quite a good-looking lad, really, and for some strange reason, although Lizzie hardly knew him, she agreed to marry him. Now, right next door to the Sun Inn is St. Bartholomew's Church, this beautiful little village church. So the two of them made their way across to the church to meet the local reverend, and they planned their happy, happy day. Well, she went back to work with a skip in her step. She'd escaped the smog and smoke of London and was looking forward very much indeed to living in this beautiful, beautiful village with a handsome young husband. However, things turned very, very sour when one day, 2 days before the wedding, David said, "Lizzie, I'm so sorry. I don't want to marry you, my dear, but I would like to marry your best friend, Alicia." You could imagine the poor girl's heart was snapped in two, and to make things so more painful, she had to work with Alicia every time they made the beds or prepared food. Lizzie would turn her back on Alicia. They wouldn't talk to each other. On the day of the wedding, poor Lizzie Dean made her way up to the attic and opened the attic window which overlooks St. Bartholomew's Church. There, she tearfully watched the bride arrive, watched the groom arrive, and the pain in that poor girl's heart became so intense, she decided there and then to terminate her life in a very, very sad way. She removed the window cord sashing and she made a noose for herself. She tied the end of the window cord sashing to the end of the bedstead, and then she shuffled onto the window frame itself with her legs dangling out the window. She then heard the sound of the wedding march and saw the door of the church open adjacently in. As soon as the wedding party made their way down the pathway, poor Lizzie jumped Her neck was broken cleanly and efficiently. The wedding party looked up and saw young Lizzie hanging from the side of the Sun Inn. You can imagine it ruined the whole of the day's celebrations. The landlord got a ladder, climbed up the ladder, and cut poor Lizzie down. In her hand was a suicide note saying, "I wish to be buried at the entrance to St. Bartholomew's, so that when David and Alicia go to church, they will have to go past my grave and feel remorse for what they've done to me." And she is indeed buried at the entrance to St. Bartholomew's Church. Now, her ghost is very, very frequent. That is one of Lancashire's most haunted public houses, Dave. And over the years, we've had nearly every paranormal TV and radio show that have gone to the Sun Inn. In 1999, I got a telephone call from a gentleman from Edinburgh, Scotland, who had just popped in there for a beer. He was on holiday, and he sat down in the snug bar and lit his pipe and looked up and saw a young lady wearing a dress that looked like it had been washed thousands of times, almost like a circus dress, as he put it, really, where all the colours had faded into one, if you will. Her hair was in ringlets from a totally different period, and he tried to make vocal contact with her, but to no avail. She then turned and walked straight towards him, and to his horror, straight for the table he was sitting at, and out of the old bricked-up door. He nearly choked on his pipe, and the landlord came rushing downstairs and said, don't worry, you've just seen the ghost of Lizzie Dean. She's been with us since the 5th of November, 1835. A very famous ghost story, but again, a tragic story, Dave.
Oh, perfect timing, my friend, as we go to break here at the top of the hour. And this is why we love it when Simon Entwistle is on with us on Spaced Out Radio. What a storyteller. And guess what? We got him for another 90 minutes on tonight's show. The stories will continue with Simon Entwistle. Remember his website, tophattours.co.uk. That's tophattours.co.uk. So if you're heading across the pond or you're in the UK right now, hit up one of Simon Entwistle's tours very, very soon. We'll be back with Hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
Looking for the stories of the strange and weird that you will find hard to find anywhere else? Check out the SOR Newswire on our website. Our writers, led by Captain Shirk, are scouring the world for the oddest and most bizarre stories we can find. Everything from weird crime to suspenseful and paranormal. We're working hard for you to bring you the most intriguing news of your day. Check out the SOR Newswire at spacedoutradio.com today.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Canada's largest UFO conference is ready to roll in Toronto this September 21st and 22nd at the Alien Cosmic Expo. This year is about the experience. Listen to the stories of Dave Scott, Travis Walton, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Ryan Stacey, Richard Dolan, Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and more. Get your tickets now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride. As we continue on here, we want to say tomorrow night on the show, Geraldine Orozco is back with The Spiritual You. We get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, KDUN, AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon, KZFX. 107, make that 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, and UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans. On the digital side, hi to everyone listening in on Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio. Great to have you with us. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free. Just go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Remember, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Tracteur. Tracteur is your password. I think he means tractor on that one, but the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot. Go shopping at our Spaced Out Radio stores. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis, and read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. Tonight, we have Simon Entwistle with us tonight, and what a treat it is to have Simon with us. His storytelling is some of the best in the world when it comes to paranormal and the hauntings that are happening in the United Kingdom. His website is tophattours.co.uk. So if you're traveling across the waters or you're already listening in the UK, this is the tour you want to take. Simon, welcome back to the show.
My pleasure, Dave. It's great to talk to you again. Really is.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure for you, my friend. I want to ask you, I know you have a ton of stories, and right off the bat, I know the Jack the Ripper tour is a major, major tourist attraction for what you do, and that goes back to 1888. And
yes.
We were talking about this when the little computer snafu happened, when your computer shut down. We were talking about the scientists recently at John Moores University in Liverpool that they believe through DNA testing that Aaron Kosminski, a 23-year-old Polish barber, was Jack the Ripper. What do you think about that news that has just come out?
Well, he certainly was on the top list. There's no two ways about it. Dave, Jack the Ripper was almost like an SAS-type character. All the murders he committed were committed within yards of people. Polly Ann Nichols, Margaret Chapman, Catherine Eddowes, Lizzie Stride, Margaret Kelly were all killed in areas that were densely populated, and yet no one heard anything. Not even the screams of these poor women who were brutally, brutally murdered. Whoever Jack the Ripper was, he knew about the area of Whitechapel, which was really called outcast London. No one liked living there. And what is so unusual about the Whitechapel area in 1888 is, at that period of time, 90,000 people lived in an area that would have been better for 15,000 people. So you can imagine it's absolutely full of people. All the houses have got like people living on the floors to make extra bed place, etc. But at that period of time, a lot of Russian, Romanian and Polish Jews arrived in Whitechapel. And the Jewish organisation there were extremely good at creating jobs, but just for themselves, really. So they weren't particularly well liked by the other inhabitants, and it caused a lot of tension. Aaron Kosminski was a Polish Jew, and he worked at the Spitalfields meat market, and there's no two ways about it. He knew how to use a knife. He would slaughter pigs and cattle, of course, and remove various organs, such as kidneys, such as liver, etc., of course, for sale to the public. But he would have to have a very, very good knowledge of the area. We do know that the Metropolitan Police were hot on his tail, along with the City of London Police, but it was Scotland Yard under Charles McNaughton that singled him out, with 5 other local characters that hit the top of the Richter scale, if you will. One of them was an American gentleman called Dr. Tumblety, but he was about 56 years old. He was overweight, and there's no way he could have run very, very quickly. The third murder was Catherine Eddowes and a police officer called PC William Kenyon of the City of London Police. As he was making his way around what's called Mitre Square, he came across the body of Catherine Eddowes. He was horrified to find the poor girl had the tip of her nose removed, there were cuts under her eyes, and her intestines were over her right shoulder, and her uterus and kidney had been removed very, very professionally by someone with an exceptionally sharp knife. As Kenyon looked up, he saw someone run across Mitre Square at great speed, and this person was very, very athletic. As Kenyon gave chase, he couldn't keep up with him, but came across a piece of apron from Catherine that had been used to wipe the blood on the blade. And PC William Kenyon, they believe, was the only officer ever to see what we now call Jack the Ripper. So I agree with Scotland Yard, and I agree with other historians that Aaron Kosminski probably was Jack the Ripper. We do know that all the eyewitnesses that came across the victims before they died mentioned, in the case of Elizabeth Long, she saw Anne Chapman. She saw Anne Chapman talking to a person who she thought was slightly foreign, sandy-haired, foreign. And also Israel Schwarzer, he also believed that the person talking to Catherine Eddowes was also foreign. So it's very, very likely that Kosminski could have been Jack the Ripper. What we do know is after the 8th of November 1888, all the murders stopped. One person disappeared that night. He was called John Druitt. Now, John Druitt was a doctor's son. He was a failed doctor. He'd been to medical school but did not pass his qualifications. He had a hatred for women, but he was also quite athletic. But, of course, he was actually English and didn't have a foreign accent at all, really. His body was found in the River Thames a month afterwards. He'd been washed up on the side of the River Thames. And Scotland Yard were convinced that he may have been involved. But Kosminski was seen about 4 or 5 weeks later acting in a most unusual way by eating food that had been thrown into the pavements, foul-smelling bread, etc. And he was put into a mental asylum. He was taken down to what's called the Seaside Home in Brighton. Now, the Seaside Home was actually run by the Metropolitan Police. All the witnesses were brought together to try and identify him as the person they'd all seen. Now, the vast majority of the witnesses, apart from Elizabeth Long and George Hutchinson, were English. The rest were all Jewish. And, of course, the Jewish population would never, ever convict one of their own. It's a strict Jewish rule, really. So, therefore, in the case of John Levi, John Levander, William Harris, Israel Schwarzer, and Louis Dumschultz, these were all local Jewish people. They were not prepared to testify that Kosminski was definitely Jack the Ripper. It is one of those stories, Dave, that is still shrouded in mystery. I know with the invention of DNA that a very, very unusual find took place. At that period of time, 2 letters were sent to the Central News Agency in London, called the Dear Boss letters, written in red ink. Many people believe they were hoax letters from a member of the public that wanted to whip up hysteria. But with the invention, the invention of DNA, they thought, right, we've got the letters, we've got the stamps. And one of the stamps was very, very carefully peeled off the back of the letter. and they did find DNA in it, and it was traced back to the postmistress at Spitalfields Market, which I found absolutely amazing, really. But she definitely wasn't Jack the Ripper. She was the postmistress, and they found out her name, and they found out relatives associated with her, and that's how they could trace her back to the DNA. A shawl was sold quite recently, a shawl belonging to Catherine Eddowes that was saturated in blood. And again, I find it hard to take in this, really, but they say that some of the blood belonged to Aaron Kosminski. How they came across it, I don't know, really. But again, the whole story is shrouded in mystery, really, Dave.
Do you think that with this new DNA testing that we are closer to finding the actual killer, or do you think that we are very, very still up in the air with who it actually may have been?
I think we're still up in the air. The 6 main suspects were John Druitt, the failed doctor, who had medical knowledge. He would have known about certain organs, and you imagine trying to remove a human uterus with skill. It was a kidney with skill. Someone with medical knowledge, but Kosminski, of course, would have done the same thing to pigs every day. And so he had knowledge of the knife. They believe the knife was actually a mortuary knife, and that's where John Druitt comes in, because his father had a surgery, and he would actually conduct post-mortems. Another character which I find hard to take in was a member of the royal family, Prince Leopold Victor. He was Queen Victoria's grandson, and it was known that he did participate in Ladies of the Night in Whitechapel. Again, another story relating to him is that he may have fathered an illegitimate child. And again, another theory was that these poor 5 prostitutes, Polly Ann Nichols, Anne Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Margaret Kelly all knew each other, and they knew the secret of the child. And the theory was that the royal family gave orders that they should all be exterminated so that the story would never, ever surface. I find that one hard to take in, Dave, really. Another character was this American gentleman called Dr. Tumblety, and he had gone to St. Thomas's Hospital in 1888, and he wanted to buy some human uteruses, which is a most unusual request. But apparently in his home in Montana, he would have guests that would arrive there, and he had various female organs inside formaldehyde on display. But again, he was quite overweight. He wouldn't have known London very well. But what we do know is that Scotland Yard were hot on his tail. And he disappeared very quickly. And instead of going down to Southampton to get back to New York, he made his way to France, to Paris, to get back to New York via France. So that did certainly cause a lot of interest from Scotland Yard. Another character would be Dr. John Donson. He was a spiritualist. He was also into black magic, and it had been said that he'd used human flesh to conduct certain black magic experiments. But I agree with a lot of historians. I think Kosminski certainly does seem to tick all the boxes in the fact that he was very fast, extremely athletic, very fast, and would have had expert knowledge of the Whitechapel area. The third murder, the murder of Elizabeth Stride, really did shock everyone, because Lizzie was found dead at a place called Duckfield's Yard. Her throat had been cut left to right in typical Ripper fashion. And all of the Metropolitan Police were called out that night. The streets were full of police officers. But 30 minutes later, Catherine Eddowes was murdered at Mitre Square, which was just in the City of London. So you've got the City of London and you've got the Metropolitan Police on full alert. Every single alleyway is being watched. Even some officers are wearing female clothing to try and entice the Ripper out of his lair. But he somehow got back from the City of London back into Whitechapel without being detected. He was almost like a highly professional, almost like an SAS-type killer, really, because all the murders were committed in built-up areas without a single sound being heard.
Interesting. I got some questions from our audience here for you that I'd like to get in. Renee is asking, all the way from New Zealand, Simon, what do you know about H.H. Holmes being in London at the time of the Ripper murders?
Absolutely fantastic. Well, I'm in Lancashire right now, and not too far, literally, if I were to get in my car, I would come to a place called Stonyhurst College. Stonyhurst College is a private school for members of the Roman Catholic faith, and Catholics from all over the world are educated there. Now, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle went to that school. He went to that school, and his form tutor was called Professor Moriarty. And it was whilst he was at that school that Dr. Holmes was actually invented. But yes, you're quite right. For a short while, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who invented Sherlock Holmes, was indeed a slight suspect. Because, again, all the killings were highly professional, done by someone who had done a lot of planning and waited and waited and waited for each victim. But that's the connection with Lancashire and Mr. Holmes there. But again, I think we're looking at Hollywood here, really, than perhaps a suspect, because the murders, let's be honest, were very, very, very cruel murders, very evil murders. And I think someone like Arthur Conan Doyle would have been a gentleman, really, and would be more, shall I say, a crime investigator than a murderer himself. But it's a great question.
All right, let's get to Catherine's question, who is asking, what's the chances that the real Jack the Ripper could have been a woman? Because there's not many people who would expect a woman, especially in that era, to commit such heinous crimes.
Very, very good question. In fact, this has been brought up again before. But you imagine the strength of this person was awesome. The neck was cut in what we call Ripper fashion, from left to right back to the vertebrae, and without a single sound. So I believe that the murder was actually male, because there wasn't a single sound. You imagine Bucks Row in Whitechapel. It's 1:30 a.m. It's late September. And on Bucks Row, you've got nearly 1,000 people living within just 30 yards away. And Polly was murdered without a single sound. I believe that the murderer had quite a large hand, which would go over the mouth. He would then cut from left to right and then drop the body nice and slowly. Before, I think she'd probably be dead before she even got to the floor, really. And then, of course, to conduct the macabre ripping, if you will, to disembowel, to cut from the groin right up to the top of the sternum with a lot of strength. But people have mentioned, was Jack the Ripper female? I personally don't think so, only due to the fact of the strength of the murders, really. If it was a woman, she'd have to be extremely strong and, again, very, very athletic. But the police certainly would not be looking for a woman, that's for sure. So it could be a good cover story.
All right, let's move on to another question here. This one comes from Trip, who is asking, Mr. Entwistle, do you know anything about the lady behind Rescue Anne, or Rescue Anne, CPR Annie? She's a lady who drowned in Paris, and her death mask is the face on the old CPR doll now.
I've got to say that is a new story for me. I would love to look into that story because it does sound quite fascinating. But no, it's a new story to me, that one, David.
All right. Oh, there was a little bit of correction here that Renee said. You mentioned Sherlock Holmes. We're talking the American H.H. Holmes, who was a serial killer during the Chicago Expo back in the 1800s. And he had made trips over to London. And people were wondering whether or not he was the H.H. Holmes person, was the serial killer Jack the Ripper, because there was some tie to that.
Right. It's an interesting story, that one. Very, very interesting, because two similar characters, two very evil characters. There's no two ways about it, really. But again, he would have to have a very, very good knowledge of Whitechapel. He'd have to know all the streets. He'd have to know what time the police would be patrolling. and you'd have to have expert knowledge on the area. When people said that they thought he was foreign, it seemed to be more German-type, Eastern European foreign to American or Canadian British, if you will.
Excellent. We got about 3 minutes before we got to go to break here at the bottom of the hour, and it is flying by. Simon Entwistle is our guest tonight. Simon, why don't you tee up our next story?
Well, our next story is... one thing I really do love, David, is actually hearing people's own testimonies with regards to ghost stories. Right. And the next story is quite a long story, so I shall wait till after the break. But it's all about a gentleman I met a good 15 years ago called William Lakin. And you can always tell when someone's being very honest and very, very truthful. And his story really came from the heart. And it is a military type ghost story dating back to the 1940s.
Interesting. Where do you find your stories? Do you find them along your tours, or are you continuously studying history books from areas?
I find that for the best ghost stories on my tours, it's nice to meet local people. And what I tend to do is go to the pub. For instance, I was in the city of Nottingham quite recently, and I put an ad in the local Nottingham newspaper for people that could come forward with ghost stories. And I made my way to this lovely old inn called the Old Scythe Inn in Nottingham. And 4 people sat down and had a really good chat to them. And you can always tell, Dave, when someone is being honest and truthful. And they're the stories that I really do enjoy, actually. You take the story in, and then, of course, when you tell it, you paint a picture in the imagination of the listener, or indeed the reader, really.
Are people quite open to bringing those stories to you, my friend?
Well, here in the United Kingdom, I've got quite a reputation for telling ghost stories. And I do get a lot of telephone calls. I get letters sometimes. And sometimes I will actually go and see various people. And I do enjoy the stories, really, particularly if it's one from the heart. And it's nice when you hear a real story that you find quite touching, really, and about someone's actual experience, which is marvellous, really.
Are there stories you will not bring on tour or won't investigate?
Well, if they're, to use a British term, if they're a little bit cheesy, I don't tend to use them, really. I like the exciting stories, really, and the ones that do catch the imagination. But I tend to keep away off, racist type stories, really, or stories that may offend people, if you will.
Right. Simon, I'm going to get you to hold on here because we are going to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Ghost stories from the United Kingdom. There's only one person you want telling those stories, and that is the man we have on Spaced Out Radio tonight, Mr. Simon Entwistle. And this is one of those shows that you will definitely want to check out on our archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. More Simon Entwistle and United Kingdom ghost stories right here on Spaced Out Radio coming up.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today. Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We've passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride on this Monday night, kicking off a first week of April. Remember, a great way to support this show is to head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, click on the shop tab, pick yourself up a t-shirt, a hoodie, hats, beanies, socks, coffee mugs, you name it, we got it. Once again, support us through the Spaced Out Radio store. Tonight we are talking with Simon Entwistle. His website, tophattours.co.uk, and he has actually won an award recently in regards to your paranormal tours. Tell us about that, Simon.
Well, the award came from an organisation called Visit England. It's tourism really. And of course, the ghost walks are tourism related. On my tours, I get people from all over the globe, and nothing gives me greater pleasure, Dave, than storytelling on the streets of, shall we say, York or Lancaster, other towns in the north of England, and you bring the stories to life from various buildings, if you will, really. On these tours, Dave, you never know who is going to turn up. And Visit England is the biggest tourism association in England, and these people just arrive. They never tell you who they are, but I received this letter saying that I've been nominated for the England Superstar Award, and I got it in 2018. So I was very, very touched by that day. Very, very touched.
Well done for your hard work through Top Hat Tours. That's for sure. Congratulations to you for that.
Oh.
Now, right before the break, you told us you had a pretty long story that'll probably take us to the top of the hour that you wanted to share with us. I'm very excited to hear it. The audience is as well, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dave. It's a very beautiful story, and as I explained before, I like to hear people's testimony regarding ghosts. And one person I met a good 15 years ago was a chap called Billy Lakin. Billy's story is quite fantastic, really. He came to my house and I made him a cup of coffee. We then sat down in front of a roaring fire. And Billy reached into his pocket and produced a photograph of himself with 57 young men in military uniform outside St. Mary's Parish Church Hall in the market town of Clitheroe. These men were part of the Territorial Army. In 1939, Great Britain and the Commonwealth declared war on Nazi Germany. The photograph was taken, and Billy explained that once the photograph was taken, they picked up all their equipment and made their way down to the railway station, and then down to the south of England, across the English Channel, and into France to a place called the Maginot Line. Now, the Maginot Line was French defences. It was solid, and the French boasted that no one would ever get through the Maginot Line. It was shared by the French and the British and the Belgians, and Billy was sent there. He would patrol the Maginot Line, and he came across a group of German soldiers. This was called the Phony War, and no one seemed to want to really start it. And Billy remembered bartering British bully beef and British cigarettes for German cigarettes and German stew. However, this friendship all stopped on the 10th of May 1940, when the Germans launched what we call Blitzkrieg, lightning war. and the German army were highly, highly efficient, extremely well trained, and very, very well armed. They cut through the French defences, and instead of going towards the Maginot Line, they went round the back of it. Bill's platoon were told, right, boys, let's get to the French port of Dunkirk. The whole British army is going to be evacuated. We can't stop this German mechanised attack. They have fabulous tanks. We've got nothing to stop them. So Billy arrived at a place called Dunkirk, a French port not too far from the English Channel itself. When he got there, he saw 300,000 British soldiers just sitting on the beach, waiting to be evacuated by a small flotilla of ships, codenamed Operation Dynamo. In Dover, England, Admiral Ramsay, Royal Navy, had organised Dynamo, and Dynamo was a great operation where the Royal Navy commissioned all the ferries from the Isle of Man, from the Isle of Wight, to get these soldiers back to England. They not only rescued the British army, but also a lot of French and Belgian soldiers to continue the fight. When Bill got to Dunkirk, he was shattered. He was really tired out. He'd walked all the way from the Maginot Line and had actually worn the leather away from his boots, and his feet were badly blistered. He got to the sand dunes of Dunkirk, took his tin helmet off, and used the helmet as a shovel to dig into the sand dune. He climbed into this little foxhole and fell into a deep sleep. He was told that whilst he'd been sleeping, the German Air Force had attacked the beach on 3 occasions. His officer then said, right, boys, it's our turn to be evacuated. They made their way down to the water's edge and waded into the water lapping around their shoulders. As Bill turned to the right, he saw a German aircraft fly down the beach and open fire. He dived under the water. When he came to the surface, the water was crimson red with the blood of his mates. He felt a hand grab his battle-dressed tunic and was dragged into a small fishing vessel by a Royal Naval sailor and then rowed out to a large Royal Naval warship where he received the first meal he'd had in 7 days, a corned beef sandwich, a mug of tea, and a very, very famous British cigarette called a Woodbine. He got to Dover and he couldn't find any of his mates. He was told by an officer, look, we know where you've come from. You don't need a ticket. Get on the first train and get back to your battalion headquarters. In his case, St Mary's Centre in Clitheroe. He remembered getting to Dover and then going from Dover to London, London up to Clitheroe, and he went past the cricket field and saw these people in white cricket flannels playing cricket and thought, this is heaven compared to where I've just come from. He got back to Clitheroe, and instead of going straight back to his mother and father's home, he went straight to St Mary's Parish Church office, because that was his orders to do just that. As he opened the door, out of those 57 young men who had been on the photograph, only 19 had got back, including himself. They were told there and then to make up the numbers again to battalion strength. Now, in those days, in the United Kingdom, you were conscripted at the age of 18, but if you wanted to join up, you could join up at 17, but you had to have your mother and father's consent. Billy was 19 years old. He had a young friend who was 17, and this young boy went to see him. Oh, Bill, go and see me mum and dad. Get them to sign this consent form. I want to fight for my country. Bill saw this young boy's parents, and they said, sorry, he's our only son. Besides, the war could be over next year anyway. Oh, please, Mum, please, Dad, sign the form. I want to fight for my country. They gave in under duress, and they said, we'll sign the form, providing you, Billy, look after him like a brother. And Bill swore he would do. So the young lad joined up, and the newly formed Clitheroe platoon was sent to the beautiful Greek island of Crete to make up the garrison there, which consisted of Australian and New Zealand armed forces. On the 21st of May, 1941, the Germans launched a highly disciplined airborne invasion of the island of Crete. The fighting in the island was quite ferocious. In fact, the locals even helped the British, Australian and New Zealand forces in the defence of the island. But in the fighting, the Clitheroe platoon lost 12 men, including the 17-year-old young boy. Bill was absolutely heartbroken at the death of this young lad and blamed himself entirely. From his POW camp in Poland, through the Red Cross, he could write letters back to his family, but also to this young boy's parents, simply saying, please, please forgive me for the death of your son. Through the Red Cross, the young boy's parents wrote to him, and they said, we do not hold you personally responsible for the death of our son. In 1945, Bill got home again. Unlike his fellow POWs, he didn't feel like celebrating anything. He was deeply upset by the death of this young boy and did blame himself every single day until Christmas Eve, 1968, when he went to the parish church office where that photograph was taken all those years ago to watch the Clitheroe Amateur Operatic Society's Christmas play. He was the last person to leave the building, walked outside and lit a cigarette. As he smoked the cigarette, he thought of that photograph and the 57 young men outside the building. He extinguished the cigarette and then made his way down a little alleyway that would take him into the town centre. As he turned the corner, he heard 3 whispers. Hey, Bill! Hey, Bill! Hey, Billy! He turned round and saw the ghost of the young lad in British Army uniform. The first thing Billy noted was the young lad hadn't aged a day. He looked exactly as he had done on Crete in 1941. The boy put up his ghostly arm. Bill, Bill, don't worry about me, Bill. I'm fine, Bill. Don't worry about me, Bill. I'm fine. With that, Billy's knees gave way. He knelt in that little alleyway on the cobblestones, and as he looked up, the tears streamed down his cheeks. He almost yelped in pain. He almost bellowed like a wounded animal. As he looked at the boy, turned, smiled, and vaporized. Billy got to his feet in a state of trauma. He'd seen something very, very, very paranormal. He walked home past the happy Christmas revellers, but the last thing he felt was celebrating anything. He got home and climbed into bed, and quite surprisingly, he had the best night's sleep he'd had in years. As he got out of bed, he heard the Christmas bells from the local churches and made his way into the bathroom. As he entered the bathroom, he caught his reflection in the shaving mirror. He looked again and again and saw a change in his facial expression. He noticed for the first time since 1941, he was actually smiling, and he felt he'd been truly forgiven for the death of this young boy all those years ago. As Billy left my house that day, he put the photograph back in his pocket and he said, Simon, I never believed in ghosts until I saw one with my own eyes. Billy died a good 12 years ago. Because I knew him very well, I felt obliged to go to his funeral. And as I sat in the pews at St. Paul's Church, the Reverend talked about his past life. I then went to the local cemetery for the interment, and by the graveside were 2 very elderly gentlemen. I had a conversation with both of them, and they said, oh yes, we were all captured together on Crete in 1941. I mentioned the young boy, and the 2 men said, oh yes, 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 Billy was looking after him. The Germans were getting very, very close to our position, and Bill said, look, you go back to the ammunition truck and hide behind the metal tailgate. You'll be okay. As the lad left the slit trench to run back to the ammunition truck, a German sniper caught him in open ground. A very sad story, but also a very true story.
Oh, my goodness. Imagine carrying that guilt.
He did do,
for the
Dave,
rest of your
for
life.
such a long time. He was a different man after 1968, but the years before, he said he was haunted every day by the memory of this young lad.
Well, no kidding. I mean, now looking back at it, if the young lad had stayed with him, there's a good chance that young lad would have potentially lived a fruitful life.
Yeah, very much so. It was just one terrible twist of fate, a terrible twist of fate. I must say, Dave, I've been to Crete, and because I knew the story very well, I went to the British and Commonwealth war graves. And they do a good job there, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. And as I went to the little office there called Suva Bay in Crete, this chap said, "Oh, yes, I can take you straight to the grave." And he did do. And it was, I just stood and looked at his name and looked at the age there. It just filled me with sadness, really, because, as you quite rightly said, he lost his life at the age of 17 and never really had a life, really.
No kidding. No kidding. So was he, when you mentioned that he was haunted by this young lad, was the young lad coming to him, or was, like, after the war? Is that what was haunting him, or just the whole, the thought of it?
It was the thought of it, really, because he actually saw the poor boy being killed, don't forget, which would have traumatized him. And he had promised the parents of this young lad that he would look after him. And, of course, he felt he'd underachieved on both fronts, really. And on coming back after the war, he would have met this young boy's parents and just felt deeply ashamed. They said he was almost like a recluse until 1968, when he got final... when the guilt was lifted off his shoulders by seeing the ghost of the young lad.
Well, that's good. The young lad kind of forgived him then.
Yeah, I reckon that's what happened, Dave. I'm sure that's the case, really.
All right. We got about 5.5 minutes before we got to go to break. I'd love for you to tee up our next story, my friend.
Yes, of course. This is a murder. It is a ghostly story, but it's a murder. We're going to turn the clock back now to 1898, and a gentleman called Mr. Henry Bertram Starr. He ran the Starr Greengrocers in the town of Clitheroe. Now, Starr was a very good-looking chap, really, and he wasn't the best of husbands. He had a girlfriend called Jacqueline Coulthard from the nearby village of Chatburn. On a beautiful August night, 1898, he was seen walking through the centre of Clitheroe with this young lady on his arm by a police officer who thought nothing of it. 3 hours later, he saw Bertram Starr walking into Clitheroe, severely soaking wet, but also severely inebriated. And the officer walked across and said, "Can I help you, sir?" "I've had a few beers. I've fallen in the river, but I'm all right. On your way, sir." The following morning, poor Jacqueline Coulthard was found dead in the River Ribble. It looked like the poor girl had been strangled. Of course, the police officer informed his inspector, and Inspector Cunningham hammered on 3 Castlegate Street, Clitheroe. The door was opened by Bertram Starr. "I arrest you for the murder of Jacqueline Coulthard," said Cunningham. "I didn't murder her. I was with her last night, but I didn't murder her. I made sure she got home," shouted Starr. He was handcuffed and taken down to the police station. He was tied to a chair, and in those days the police were allowed to be a bit more persuasive than they are nowadays. For 3 days and 3 nights, no food, no water, and no sleep. But he wasn't prepared to admit to the murder. He was then sent down to the city of Manchester and put on trial at Manchester Strangeways courts, and there the jury were 99.5% convinced he'd murdered her. But in those days, you had to have an eyewitness. There was no DNA. There was no forensic evidence. So therefore, they let him go. He came back to his wife, who was delighted to see him. "Since you've been away," she said, "we've had the police going through all my belongings. I just need some peace and quiet." "Don't worry," said Starr. "We shall go on holiday. We'll go to Blackpool." Now, Blackpool is a seaside resort, and in 1898, it'd be a bit like going to Miami Beach. It had this huge tower called Blackpool Tower. It was a fun place to be. However, they booked into the Astoria Hotel on Blackpool's Golden Mile, and there Starr decided to drink quite heavily. And as we all know, alcohol can have a very, very bad effect on all of us. In his case, he became very aggressive. He upset the staff in the Astoria Hotel. He upset his poor wife, and his poor wife Anne tried to pacify him by pushing him upstairs to the bedroom. There, he flew into a rage and stabbed his poor wife in the chest and the throat by using a letter knife. He then rushed out of the building, ran up the Golden Mile to the next public house, the Duke of York, and there the landlord and landlady were rather concerned about his white shirt and the many bloodstains on that shirt, and they called the police. The police arrived and they arrested Starr. The following morning, his poor wife, Anne, was found dead in the Astoria Hotel. This time, he could not get away with murder. He was sent to Kirkdale, Liverpool, and put on trial and found guilty of the murder of his wife. As he was led outside, he stood on top of the trapdoor, waiting for his last second of life, when Clitheroe police intervened. They took him back to the cell and gave him a cup of tea and a player's cigarette. Inspector Cunningham said, "Henry, you will be taken out in 4 minutes' time, and you will be executed for the murder of your wife. Can you please tell me about the murder of Jacqueline Coulthard in Clitheroe?" He drew heavily on the player's cigarette. Yes, I murdered Jacqueline Coulthard. I've been seeing that girl for 5 years. That night, she decided to terminate our relationship. I couldn't bear to see that girl in the arms of another man, so I threw her in the River Ribble. As she tripped over in the shallow water, I pounced on her. I put my foot on the back of her head, and when her feet stopped thrashing away, I released the pressure, and her body floated down the River Ribble. With that, he was then taken out and executed for the murder of his wife. And of course, you can't hang a man twice. And Clitheroe police were pleased that they got him for the murder of poor Jacqueline. I will never forget conducting a tour down that little alleyway where he lived all those years ago. And in the time I've been conducting the tour, that building has been sold no fewer than 15 times. The very first tour I did, the light came on upstairs, and as we left, it was turned off. The following day, I went back and was told that there was no one in the house whatsoever because it was being renovated and the builders had all gone home. Just outside that building, scratched into the pavement, are the words, Henry Starr. I went to the local library, did some research, and Henry Starr is the spitting image of the Hollywood film actor Tom Selleck. He could pass for Tom Selleck's double. A most amazing ghostly story.
No kidding, my friend. No kidding. That is just amazing. I can't wait to see what you have for us in our number 3 coming up right after this. Simon, you are a beautiful storyteller. I cannot wait for the next hour to see what you have in store for the Spaced Out Radio audience. Now, if you want to check out Simon's website, go to tophattours.co.uk. That website, once again, tophattours.co.uk. Simon Entwistle sticking with us here in hour 3. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Come hang out with Spaced Out Radio, where we own the night. This is Carl. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to chat with us live. On Instagram, at Dave Scott SOR. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. SOR archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. Come join us, or I will come join you. See you at your window.
At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Canada's largest UFO conference is ready to roll in Toronto this September 21st and 22nd at the Alien Cosmic Expo. This year is about the experience. Listen to the stories of Dave Scott, Travis Walton, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Ryan Stacey, Richard Dolan, Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and more. Get your tickets now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot THAL. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to BUMBLEFOOT.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. BUMBLEFOOT.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at BUMBLEFOOT.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Geraldine Orozco is back with The Spiritual You. We get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon. In New Orleans, UPRN 107.7 FM, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, and KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California. On the digital side, hi to everyone listening in on Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio. Good to have you with us. Don't forget, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Tracteur. Tracteur is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. We're going to rock out to Bumblefoot. You could go shopping in our Spaced Out Radio store. It's a good way to support what we do here on a nightly basis. Read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. Simon Entwistle is with us tonight, all the way from the United Kingdom, hanging out, telling us some spooky ghost stories from his great ghost tours that he puts together. This is his job, telling these spooky tales of legends and lore of a time that was so long ago. Simon's website is tophattours.co.uk, and we got a little surprise in the chat rooms. A few people were asking, can we skip the news tonight and keep Simon on? It's such a beautiful thing to ask, and Simon has graciously said, of course, he would stick with us until the end of the show. So that's what we're going to do. Simon, thank you so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure, Dave. It's, as I said before, it's really nice to be able to talk to you again. I enjoyed the last slot we did some years ago, and so it's good to be back again.
I got a question from Renee. She is asking, Simon, do you have any tapes or CDs or a place we can download your stories? That would be awesome to listen to at bedtime.
Yep, I do have a lot of material on YouTube, and I made a series called Ghostly Tales from the Grave under Simon Entwistle. You'll find them all on YouTube. There are some beautiful stories. In fact, I'd like to use one of them now, actually. Then perhaps later on you can just click onto YouTube and listen to the story. This next one is actually quite a sad story once again, Dave, but it really happened. And we're going to make our way now into the beautiful county of Yorkshire.
Sure.
And a rather beautiful village called Slaburn in West Yorkshire. It's a very isolated part of Yorkshire, known as the West Riding. And if you committed any offence whatsoever in that particular area, you were taken to the local public house called the Hart to Bounty. But you were taken upstairs above the bar to the courtrooms, and there the local magistrates would deal with a variety of offences. We're now going to turn the clock back to 1894 and the story of Isabella and Grace Isherwood. Now, Grace came from a place called Dalton in Furness, which is in Cumbria, a county called Cumbria, northern England. She had 2 children to 2 different men. Now, in those days, it was classed as a terrible, terrible sin to become pregnant outside of marriage. And the village girls used to shun her because she was classed as a bit of a harlot, really. She felt very, very uncomfortable living in the village because of all this abuse from her fellow females. And she heard about a job as a housekeeper very near the village of Slaburn, working for a farmer. So she applied for the job and she got the job. Now, she had 2 sons, James, who was 7, and Thomas, who was just 1 year old. And she left Thomas with friends. She arrived at the farm, and the farmer was, would you believe, 83 years old. She was 22 years old, and the farmer took a shine to her and proposed to her. And she thought, right, I'm still a young woman. He's an old chap. He won't be around much longer. I shall inherit the farm and all his land as well. So she agreed to marry him. The one thing she never told him was the fact she had 2 sons. She just brought James with her. Now, as the weeks went by, a letter arrived at Meanley Farm from her sister, Isabella, saying, look, you sent no money back for young Thomas. The people looking after him are really annoyed, so therefore I'm going to have to bring him to you. Of course, in those days, no telephones, so you had to just literally rely on letters. So Grace made her way down to the railway station in the town of Clitheroe, and as the train came in, as the smoke disappeared from the station, standing there was her sister Isabella with young 1-year-old Thomas. And Grace said to Isabella, look, I can't take him back to the farm. My husband doesn't know I've got 2 children. He'll throw me out. So therefore they went to the nearby station inn and had a glass of stout, a very strong beer. And they thought, OK, let's leave the little boy at the town workhouse. The town workhouse can look after him. They made their way up to the workhouse and they met the manager. And the manager said, well, all right, we'll take the little boy, but one of you will have to stay with him because a boy as young as this will have to have a relative. Oh, we can't do that, said Grace and Isabella. So they set off walking. Now, the village of Slaburn is very, very isolated through long country lanes, over long green country fields, over 2 rivers. And as they made their way down towards the River Hodder on this rather hot summer's day, young Thomas knelt down by the side of the river to drink from the cool waters of the River Hodder. That's when Grace and Isabella pounced on him. They put his head under the water. When the poor lad's legs stopped thrashing away, they realised they'd done their duty. Both of them waded out to the centre of the river and they pushed the gravel and the chippings away and they made a watery grave for young Thomas. His body was placed in the grave and they covered it with chippings and stones and then made their way into Slaburn to the Hark to Bounty Inn for a celebration drink. They'd done their duty. Well, 3 days later, a local farmer called Harry Barge took his sheep to drink from the River Hodder. As he looked into the centre of the river, he saw what he thought was a little hand waving in the current. He waded into the river and pushed back the gravel and the chippings and found the body of Thomas. Harry Barge was deeply, deeply upset because he had a son the same age. He took the little boy's body into the village of Slaburn and took the body upstairs to the courtrooms, the only government building within the village. Word spread very, very quickly to all the surrounding towns that a little boy had been found dead in the River Hodder. It wasn't long before that information reached the ears of the local manager from the workhouse, and he put 2 and 2 together. Little boy, eh? I had 2 women who came to see me the other day with a little boy. They looked very, very suspicious. He made his way to Slaburn and went into the courtrooms and saw the little boy there and said, yes, this little boy was at my workhouse with 2 women who were acting very, very suspiciously. I can give you the notification of what these women looked like. It wasn't long before Grace and Isabella were both arrested, brought to the Heart to Bounty, and put on trial. There they told the judge that little Thomas had just collapsed, and the judge said, well, why was this little boy placed in the river in a watery grave? You've murdered him. That's when Isabella broke down and admitted to the murder of 1-year-old Thomas. Both women were sentenced to death there. The judge, Judge Nigel Hawkins, put on the black cap and sentenced both of them to death by hanging in the city of Leeds. However, the riverbank where poor Thomas lost his life is still haunted by the ghost of this young lad, whose only crime in life was to be a little boy who was never loved. A very touching story, Dave.
Wow, that's just heartbreaking. I mean, to think that a mother could do that to her own child for the sake of greed.
It was greed, Dave. There's no two ways about it, really. And, of course, they never inherited the farmhouse because
Obviously
of this act.
What happened to the other boy, her other son, if she was put to death?
He was actually sent back to Dalton-in-Furness, the family home. The farmer, of course, didn't want to look after him because of what his wife had committed, a terrible crime. So he was just sent back to his home, Dalton-in-Furness. And that was the last we ever heard of him, really.
Well, I do have to ask, in regards to that, are the two ladies haunting the courthouses or maybe the riverbanks as well?
Well, they were both sent to the city of Leeds, quite some distance away, and they were publicly hanged at the city gallows for their terrible crimes, really.
My goodness. That's just sad. So this little boy ghost of little Thomas that people are seeing.
Yes.
What are they? What exactly are they seeing when they see him?
Well, there's a village green which leads down to the river. And across from the green is the Heart to Bounty Inn and some beautiful old Victorian cottages. And there have been stories over the years of people that have driven past the green and glanced to the right and seen a little figure running across the green towards the river. On quite a few occasions. And at first they thought, this is strange, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And there's been stories of this little person that's been seen there, and it could only be the ghost of young Thomas, who's sadly lost his life under such terrible situation, really.
Interesting. Very interesting. And that would be freaky. That would be freaky, very coming across a little baby ghost. Up next, what do you have for us?
Right, well, this is a truly amazing ghost story, Dave. And as I mentioned before, to conduct my tours, I need people to help me. And again, without wishing to repeat myself, I like to hear eyewitness accounts. I received a telephone call from a gentleman from Blackburn, Lancashire, called Ibrahim. Ibrahim is a British Muslim, and he runs his own taxi business. He's always looking for good quality vehicles because in the taxi business, you can wear a vehicle out very, very quickly. He got a magazine, a very famous magazine here in England called the Exchange and Mart magazine. And there he looked in the magazine and saw from the town of Bolton near Manchester a Ford Granada estate car for sale for £3,500. It had only done 12,000 miles, and he thought, that sounds like a bargain to me. So he made his way to Bolton and saw the vehicle and asked the owner, a gentleman called John Hodgson, if he could test drive it. He took the vehicle around the town of Bolton and he said, yes, this car's fine. He then said, it's only done 12,000 miles, Mr. Hodgson. Why do you want to sell it for that price? Hodgson's response was, in my business, you have to sell cars quickly. So he bought the car and took it back to the town of Blackburn and had it what's called Hackney registered, a very, very strict MOT test. And he had a radio fitted and licensed properly through the local authority. Well, that very, very first night, he took the vehicle out and his sister Shanaz was on the radio and she would contact him to tell him about certain jobs that were coming up, etc. That first night, the car worked very, very well. And he then had a job that would take him over what's called the Lancashire Moors, a very open and desolate piece of road in between the city of Manchester and the town of Bolton. As he was driving down the road there, he'd just dropped 3 young ladies off in Bolton and was coming back home again. He glanced up into the rearview mirror and saw a car advancing at great speed. The car went past him, and then Ibrahim glanced up at the rearview mirror for the second time, and to his horror, he was staring into the eyes of an elderly lady with grey hair and glasses. He knew she shouldn't be there. She'd just appeared. Ibrahim put his foot on the brakes and screamed in terror, jumped out of the car and ran some 100 yards away, and then nervously stopped, reached into his pocket and placed a cigarette between his lips, and then very, very casually walked back to the vehicle. As he looked into the back of the vehicle, there was absolutely no one there whatsoever. He got his mobile phone out and telephoned his father, who was quite busy at the time with another taxi, and he said, "I'm not driving this vehicle. I've just seen this woman in the back seat. The vehicle's haunted." His father laughed at him and said, "Well, look, what I'll do is I'll come over to the moors. We'll swap the vehicles over." And that's exactly what they did do. The following evening, Ibrahim's father, Ali, took the vehicle out. He made his way into nearby Blackburn, into nearby Blackpool, and over towards Liverpool. And on the journey back, he put the local Asian radio station on, but felt he was being watched, and noticed that inside the taxi, it was getting very, very cold. He then glanced up at the rear-view mirror and was staring into the eyes of an elderly lady with grey hair and glasses. Like his son Ibrahim, he screamed in terror, stopped the vehicle and jumped out. He glanced in the back seat. There was no one there at all. But like his son, he too was too scared to get back in the vehicle. So he telephoned his second son. And his second son, Nawaz, arrived and took the vehicle back to Blackburn. The following morning, all 3 taxis had to be cleaned, and this job was given to Shanaz. She cleaned the dashboard, she cleaned the upholstery, and as she got into the new taxi, she sat in the front seat and started to clean the windows. She then felt very, very nervous for some strange reason, glanced up at the rearview mirror, and she too was looking into the face of an elderly lady with grey hair and glasses. The poor girl screamed, rushed back into the house. Her father, Ali, came down and said, "What's wrong? There's a woman in the back seat." Ali said, "Right, that's it. That vehicle is going back." Well, they asked Nawaz, the only son who had not seen the ghost, to drive the taxi, whilst Shanaz, Ali and Ibrahim got into the second vehicle and followed the first vehicle back to Bolton. They drove into the forecourt of the garage where they'd bought the vehicle to Mr. Hodgson's. Hodgson came out and said, "There's nothing wrong with that vehicle. It's got a full MOT. It's got a good service record. It's got a brand new wing." And then Ali said, "Why has it got a brand new wing?" And Hodgson nervously looked down at the ground and said, "Well, it was involved in a road traffic accident. There was a fatality in the back seat. I've got an old Bolton Evening Press newspaper." He went back into the garage, opened his locker, and came out with a oil-stained Bolton Evening News from 2 years previously. As he opened the newspaper, Shanaz, Ali, Ibrahim glanced at a photograph with the words "Fatal Accident, Bolton Town Centre." They looked into the face of the same woman they'd seen in the rear-view mirror in the back seat of that taxi. They were given their money back, but I've often wondered whether Hodgson ever sold the taxi, the Ford Granada, ever again. You can always tell when someone's being very honest. When I met Ibrahim, he was shaking with fear and told me that he still has nightmares of the ghostly lady on the back seat.
Oh, my goodness. That's a scary way. And, you know, those are stories that we hear very often today from people who are driving in taxi cabs, that sometimes they're not alone when they're riding.
Yes.
We've heard that. We've heard that. I know there's a ghost in Vancouver that, waits for taxis or people to pick her up while she's hitchhiking. And then she'll have a conversation with whomever the driver is. And next thing you know, she's gone. I mean, there's a lot of that goes on. That's not that irregular.
A most amazing story. One story which had just come to light. Some years ago, I met a chap called John Burroughs, and John, again, from looking into his face, you could tell he was telling a very true story. He lived in the northern city of Preston in Lancashire. His mother lived in the beautiful market town of Kendal in the Lake District, the English Lake District. And every Monday he would drive from Preston to Kendal. And he would come down what we call the motorway here in England and then come off to take the nice country route from the motorway into the town of Kendal. As he was driving down on this lovely September evening, the sun was still out. It was just starting to drop. The sun was just starting to drop. And as he came into the little hamlet of Hincaster, he saw a woman by the side of the road wearing what looked like a white dress and a blue cardigan. She looked to be deeply distressed, and her dress had heavy bloodstaining on the left-hand side. John could see her, and she almost signalled him down. He slowed the vehicle down, opened the door and said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, please take me to the hospital. Please take me to the hospital." "Get in." She climbed in, and John put his foot down on the accelerator, going at great speed down these country lanes to the Westmoreland County Hospital in Kendal. Because he realised his passenger was moaning in terrible pain, he went through 3 red lights, hoping and praying that nothing else was coming. 3 red traffic lights, that is. He then drove up to the hospital, and as he was slowly reversing into the parking lot near the casualty building, this young lady opened the door and scampered across the asphalt. And as John was still reversing the vehicle, he saw her actually enter the casualty building. He stopped the car, turned the ignition off, locked the car, and looked at the seat, which was heavily bloodstained. He then went into the casualty department, and there was a nurse there. "Can I help you, sir?" she said. Yes. I've just brought this young girl in. She's been badly injured." "There's no one here," said the nurse. "Oh, yes, there is. I've just seen this young girl. She was badly injured. She'd been knocked down by a car or something, and I drove her here at great speed from Hincaster to the hospital. There's no one here," she said. "Are you some kind of idiot or something?" No, I brought this young girl in." At the same time, a doctor came and said, "What's all this commotion about?" And Burroughs again told him that he brought this young girl in. And the doctor looked a bit quizzical and said, "Well, follow me." He took him to an office behind the casualty department and said, "What does this young girl look like?" "Well, I'd say about 20 years old. She had a white dress on. She was heavily bloodstained on her right-hand side. And she also had a blue cardigan on." He then reached into his desk and brought out a Westmoreland Gazette newspaper and showed him page 3. And there, road traffic accident, Edith Blundell dies at Westmoreland County Hospital. And Burroughs, just like the Abraham story, saw the picture of the same young lady.
Wow.
He told me, he said, "Simon, my blood froze and the hair on the back of my head actually lifted." It traumatized him. Him.
Simon, I'm going to have to get you to hold on right there because we're going to go to break here. Simon Entwistle's going to go the distance with us tonight on the mighty SOR. More paranormal stories from the UK coming up on Spaced Out Radio right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio. Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thaw, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com. Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on the mighty SOR. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. So glad all of you could join us tonight. Normally we get into the SOR News Wire, but tonight we're going the distance with Simon Entwistle from tophattours.co.uk. And if you are over in the United Kingdom, you definitely want to hop on one of Simon's tours. Well worth the tourism dollar, that is for sure. Simon, thank you so much for going the distance with us and doing the extra half hour. Really appreciate you doing that.
My pleasure, Dave. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. It really is.
Well, anytime you want to come on, you just let me know like you did the last time, and boom, we're going to book a date just like that. Obviously, we'd be silly not to, my friend.
Well, the next story is quite a unique story, really, and it's something which both the British and American governments probably find a little bit embarrassing, really. But we will turn the clock back to 1781, and that is when America got her independence from Great Britain, with the help of the French, of course. And America did become an independent country. And some 40 years later, America, of course, had her own government, her own military, and they were a bit concerned about Canada, which, of course, came under the British Commonwealth. And quite a few American forces actually infiltrated Canada and set fire to Canadian government buildings. Now, the British government were not at all impressed by this, along with the Canadian government. And Lord Wellington organised a most amazing raid, which has gone on in history as one of the most amazing raids in military history. He chose the very, very cream of the British Armed Forces. The York and Lancaster Infantry, the Royal Scots Highland Infantry, Royal Marines, and the Royal Green Jackets. Now, at one time, the British Army, particularly in the American War of Independence, would form long lines with a fife and a drum, and they would slowly advance towards enemy opposition, making themselves, well, easy meat, really, to be picked off by volley fire. But what Wellington did with this raid is he said, right, gentlemen, we are going to sail up the Potomac River, we're going to go straight into Washington, D.C., and we're going to set fire to the White House and also the congressional buildings as well. So they set off, 3,000 men apparently, and they went straight at the Potomac River, but the American scouts could see them coming, and word filtered back to Washington that this British force was on its way. So President Madison organised the defence, And they were absolutely convinced that they would snuff out the British attack before it even got to Washington, D.C. Therefore, the cooks prepared some excellent food. The finest wine was put on all the tables to celebrate the American victory. However, this unit that landed at a place called the Blandenberg Heights, they were the very cream of the British Armed Forces. And what Lord Wellington said was, when you land, boys, do not wait, just go straight towards Washington. And some of the Royal Scots Highlanders were advancing so fast that some of the American defenders were finding it hard to keep out the way. And they got into Washington, D.C. Now, by far the biggest hero of this whole story is a very, very brave American woman called Dolly Madison. And she, to me, has to be the all-American hero, and a lady that doesn't really get much respect, really, because she was a very brave woman. As the first British soldier entered the White House, she got a knife and she cut away the actual canvas painting of George Washington, and she rolled it into a scroll, and she escaped out of the back of the White House as the first Scottish soldier actually entered the building. Well, they found all the food was laid out, and just the senior officers of the Marines, the York and Lancasters, the Green Jackets, and the Royal Scots sat down and enjoyed this huge banquet on behalf of the American government. Well, their mission was to actually set fire to the White House, and that's exactly what they did do. Then the congressional buildings as well, and then the warships in the harbour. And then they made their way back to their fleet. But later on at New Orleans, the Americans were going to get their revenge by destroying half of this actual invading force. I believe that Dolly Madison, to this very day, still haunts the White House. And there have been stories of this gallant, brave lady being seen clutching the actual canvas painting of George Washington. I'm also told that to this very day there are actually scorch marks in one of the rooms that depicts this terrible act that took place all those years ago. And it's a sad, tragic story, but it was done in retaliation to American incursions into Canada, which of course comes under British Commonwealth. But amazing story, Dave.
It always makes me wonder. I would love to get someone from inside the White House to talk about the ghosts that are there, because it is apparently so inhabited with the paranormal. Yes. It would be just a thrill.
I mean, all those famous, of course, Lincoln. I mean, what a great president he was. And they say Lincoln does haunt the White House and has been seen by quite a few people. And in America's darkest periods, they say that that George Washington also makes an appearance in the White House.
Amazing. We've had a question from way early on in this show about the Pendle winches.
Yes, yeah. Great story. In many ways, a travesty of justice. It's a long story, so I shall try and condense it into, shall I say, 15 minutes, Dave. Is that okay?
We got about 12 and a half minutes, if that's okay.
Okay. We'll turn the clock back to 1603. At that period of time, we'd just lost a fabulous queen called Queen Elizabeth I. She led by example, defeated the Spanish Armada way back in the year 1588. And when she died, she was replaced by a completely different character. None other than King James VI of Scotland, who then became King James I of England. This man was absolutely paranoid about witchcraft. He wrote a book called The Demonology Book. You can buy the Demonology Book today from any leading bookshop. And as you pick it up, how to find a witch, how to try a witch, and how to eradicate a witch. Throughout the whole length of Great Britain, the area called the Forest of Pendle in the north of England stuck out like a sore thumb. Living deep in that forest were a group of ladies that have gone down in history as the Pendle Witches. What made two of them so unique is that two of them were over 85 years old, Dendyke and Chattox. Both women had survived because most most people, their life expectancy for that period of time would be 35. Remember, no doctors, no hospitals, no medicine. Although in many ways, these two ladies knew a lot about plants. Living in a small cottage was Demdike, her daughter Elizabeth, and she had 3 children, James, Jeanette and Alison Devise. Living nearby was Bessie Chattox, also 85 years old, with her daughter Anne Redfern. These were the main Pendle witches. Alison Devise, granddaughter of Demdike, she made her way through the forest of Pendle, and there she came across a Halifax peddler called John Law. When I say peddler, John Law was basically a walking salesman, large pack in his back full of 1612 luxuries, and Alison did in fact beg of him. "Oh, please, sir, just a few pins, sir. Get away with you," shouted John Law. According to John Law, the Halifax peddler, out of the forest appeared a huge black dog with snarling white teeth and glowing red eyes, and the dog sat next to Alison, and the dog talked. "Alison, shall I lame him for you?" Lame him, she screamed. Law felt this terrible pain on his left arm and left leg and collapsed in agony in the forest of Pendle. The kind people of the small market town of Cone could see him. They got a stretcher team together and they carried him down the slopes of Pendle Hill and into an old alehouse called the Greyhound Inn, which is long, long since gone. There the landlord, John Edrington, looked after him, and as Law's voice returned, Law shouted, "I've been cursed! There's a witch in the forest, a young lass with a dog. I swear to you, she's in league with the devil. The dog talked to her. Send letters back to my family." Letters were sent back to Halifax in West Yorkshire, and John Law, the Yorkshire peddler, his son Abraham received the first letter. "Me father's in trouble. Better go and collect him." He set off from Halifax, arrived in Cone, and saw his father in a twisted and contorted state. "Father, what's happened to you, man? You look terrible." "Abraham, I've been cursed. There's a witch in the forest, a young lass with a dog. I want you to go and find her. Bring her here, reverse the curse." Well, Abraham must have been quite a brave lad, really. He made his way deep into the forest of Pendle and found this little stone cottage called Malkin Tower. Hammered on the door opened, and there was James Devise, Alison's brother. "Can I help you, sir?" "I want to see Alison Devise. My father wants to see her. She's in here, sir." Alison came to the door. "Right, lass, you're coming with me." She was dragged through the forest of Pendle and into the old Greyhound Inn, where she made eye contact with John Law, the Halifax peddler. There she burst into tears and admitted to witchcraft. Strangely enough, John Law, the Halifax peddler, was about to forgive her, but not his son Abraham. "Oh no, we'll have you for this." And he contacted the local magistrate called Roger Nowell. Roger Nowell knew all about the king's paranoia. He knew if he could incriminate this young girl, he was going to curry favour with none other than the King of England, King James I, personally. So therefore, Alison was arrested. She burst into tears again and told Roger Nowell about her grandmother Demdike fashioning clay pictures of human beings. When I say a clay picture, almost like a voodoo doll. Also how she'd gone into the cemetery and taken teeth and hair from corpses and made these clay dolls with human hair and human teeth, and how she'd selected victims and crumbled the clay picture over the fire, and people were dying, not necessarily straight away, but certainly after they'd had encounters with them. Well, Roger Nowell was delighted, and the first thing he did do was have Demdike, Chattox and Redfern arrested. They were brought to Reed Hall, Burnley, where this huge argument took place. There they were all sent to the city of Lancaster and put into what's called the Well Tower. In the meantime, Alison Devise's mother, Elizabeth, organised in the forest of Pendle what's called the Good Friday Meeting, where all these other so-called witches met. There they got a cauldron, a large cooking vessel, and the whole idea was to get a potion together to blow the gates of Lancaster City Castle open and rescue their loved ones. However, nothing happened. What did happen is word reached the ears of the local magistrate, Roger Nowell, and he gave orders that every single person who had attended the Good Friday meeting should be arrested immediately. And they were. By far the most famous of all those so-called witches was a lady of the name of Alice Nutter. She knew Roger Nowell very, very well. And what made her totally different to the rest of the so-called witches was the fact she could read and write. Now, way back in the year 1612, women were not allowed to possess a brain. And one thing Alice did have was a brain, and she knew how to use it. She complained about land disputes, nothing to do with witchcraft whatsoever. And Nowell wanted to get rid of her. And the only way he could get rid of her was to use his trump card, the youngest of the Devise children. She was called Jeanette Devise. She was only 9 years old, and whilst her grandmother Demdike, her mother Elizabeth, brother James, sister Alison, had been sent to Lancaster City Castle, she had been kept at the home of the local magistrate, Roger Nowell, and there she had been groomed by him. 3 meals a day, nice clothes to wear, lovely warm bed to sleep in. And after 3.5 months of this kindness, she was only too happy to incriminate her whole family. In the court, she shouted, "Me grandmother's a witch! Me mother's a witch! So's me brother, so's me sister!" Her mother shouted, "Stop it, Jeanette! You don't know what you're saying! Have my mother removed from the court! She's upsetting me, sir!" And her mother was taken down to the cells. He then pointed towards Alice Nutter, the landowner. "Jeanette, this woman here, was she at the Good Friday meeting at Malkin Tower, your home in the Forest of Pendle, on Good Friday?" "She was, sir." And Alice Nutter was convicted of witchcraft. The Pendle witches were all executed on the 20th of August 1612 in the city of Lancaster. Hands tied behind their backs, had to mount a rostrum, and there the stools they were standing on were kicked out from underneath them. These poor people did not hang, they literally strangled to death. As the rope was placed around Alice Nutter's neck, she saw this huge crowd gather to watch this horrible, macabre execution. And there she caught the eye of Roger Nowell. "I shall haunt you for the rest of your life." Then the stools were kicked out from underneath them. A most amazing but tragic story, Dave.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We got about 4 minutes left. About 4 minutes left with you tonight. The passion in your voice for these stories, how do you find it for each and every story to tell them so well?
I suppose because I've done them so many times, Dave. On Sunday I had a coach tour, and I took the tourism coach over the top of Pendle Hill, and I could do that story in my sleep. A bit like the Jack the Ripper story. I have done tours on request from Visit England in Whitechapel, London. But it's like anything really, David. If you find a subject of interest, you then give it 110%. And it's only really through interest in the stories that they come across in my own way, really, Dave. You've got to want to do it, really.
So, do you ever get bored? Do you ever get bored of telling the same stories?
No. One story I never get tired of, Dave, is my dad, who passed away in 1982. But we had, as a young boy, I'll always remember going to this lovely Victorian house, which he bought in 1960. And I remember arriving there and looking at this gorgeous house. My mum and dad made the bed very, very quickly. And my dad had no idea he was going to see something very, very paranormal. He got into bed, and there was bright, bright moonlight shining straight through the window into the bedroom. He heard the sounds of tiny footsteps, and into the room came a liver and white cocker spaniel dog. The dog made its way to the corner of the room, and my father thought, "Oh, I've left the door open. How's that dog got in here?" He got out of bed. Come on, let's have you. His hand went straight through the dog. He then made a second attempt to grab the collar of the dog. His hand went through it. The dog then turned and looked at the window as if its name was being called. The dog then faded. My father, in a state of shock, sat on the end of the bed, and my mother woke up from a jolt. She'd been in a deep sleep. And she said, "What are you doing at the end of the bed?" to my father. He told her what he'd just seen, and she said, "That's so strange. I've had a dream. It was so clear. It was like being in the real world. I dreamt there's a man outside in Victorian clothing with a dog lead in his hand, looking up at the window and pointing towards the window. And you just connected my dream with your sighting of this ghostly dog." My dad would never lie about anything, Dave, and that is quite a unique story. What I find absolutely amazing, and I swear to you it's true, is just occasionally I've done lectures on cruise ships, PowerPoint shows, storytelling, if you will. And I had to audition for that role. And would you believe, David, and I don't blame you for not believing this, my father sold that house in 1971. Over the years, it's been sold a few times. But when I went for the audition, it was back to that house. And the lady who had bought the house, the cruise director who did all the auditions for the cruise ships, she bought the house. When I got there, I told her I used to live here. And I told her about the dog. And the cup and saucer she was holding in her hand slipped through her fingers and smashed on the floor. She said, "That's strange. My brother comes from London, and every year he will spend Christmas with me." And that very, very first year, when he stayed overnight, he said the door of the bedroom opened, and in came a liver and white Cocker Spaniel. And I thought, thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad. You really did see something that night. An intriguing story, David.
Intriguing indeed. My friend, we only got about 30 seconds left with you. I want to say thank you for going the distance with us. What a pleasure to have you back on the show, Simon. We hopefully can get you back on for Halloween month. We'd really appreciate that.
That would be great, Dave. And could I just say what deep affection we all have in England for Canada. Gorgeous country and great people as well.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Always a pleasure. Simon Entwistle, everybody, went the distance with us tonight. What a pleasure. What a treat to listen to his stories. Remember his website, tophattours.co.uk. So make sure you check those on out. We're going to close things out now. Tomorrow night on the show, we have Geraldine Orozco. She'll be back with The Spiritual You. We're going to hit her up and ask her what UFO MegaCon was all about, since I missed that one. Next year I'll be there for sure. 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Everyone in our chat rooms and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Please remember, this show is copyright. Copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for telling your friends, doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night. Because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night. See you all tomorrow, everybody.